Hi there, welcome back to Japan, where I am talking to probably one of the most interesting people who I have the pleasure of knowing, Mr. Patrick Lew of Patrick Lew Band, along with several other aliases, several other acts, several musical personas. I'll just quickly introduce. I've known you since I think it's 2009, when I was doing some music reviewing online. And I think the thing that strikes me is that you are very much a person of the time, in that you are someone who, unsigned musician, but you've had a great deal of experience of online interactions. You're one of the most prolific social media people I know. And very much you do everything in your own way. There's no sort of sense that you don't have that sort of university musician thing. It's very much Patrick Lew does what Patrick Lew wants to do, which I think makes for like a really fascinating sound. So basically, obviously, we know each other quite well, but I still feel like I'm learning about you all the time. And you have such an interesting perspective as the second Californian I have spoken to as part of this interview process. So I guess my first question would be, I mean, like I said, I would describe you as very much an outsider, but a real sign of what so many people feel about the unsigned music scene. How do you feel about that? I mean, how do you feel about the comparison between being signed or unsigned, about your position in music?
Well, being unsigned has some advantages. Well, I don't have to deal with the record labels, the middleman, do all that kind of stuff. I got a lot of creative freedom being an unsigned artist. Gives me plenty of time to work on my own craft. I'm not bounded by commitments and time constraints in getting a record out there. As far as the touring aspects goes, I'm like the type of guy that's like less is more when it comes to live performances and stuff like that. So if I were signed to a record label, I would lose a little bit of that freedom of being independent and being able to do what I wanted to do. So I personally prefer to be more of an independent artist for sure, because the benefits are there, the creative freedom is right there. It gives me a good work-life balance when it comes to live performing and all these public promotional appearances and stuff like that. It's more up my alley. I mean, I've been doing this music thing for about like almost 20 years independently on the unsigned music websites.
Yeah.
And there's been some highs, there's been some lows, but I can honestly say I'm very happy with how everything has turned out, and I want to keep going at it, really.
There's no doubt in my mind that one of the things that strikes me, and this is something that I've contended with a lot myself, because I've worked with the record companies and I've worked outside of the record companies. I would say the style of music you do it's really something which is it's more about passion and more about sort of self-expression than it is about technicality. You're not someone who I would never expect to hear anything overly technical from you. I'd expect to hear something personal. So I wonder with that, do you think that that's something that, because obviously you've said about how you prefer being independent, but do you think for your style of music, it's more natural that you be independent, because record labels wouldn't be so much into someone, like I say, being kind of outside of the norm, doing things in a different way. Do you feel that that's kind of more your natural position, or did you ever feel that it was a good idea to work towards like a record contract?
When I was younger, before the whole internet social media thing took off, I started in the early 2000s. So I guess back in those days, if you really wanted to make it big or make an impact in the music industry or the music scene, you had to be signed to an independent or major label, so to speak. I actually did get signed once to a smaller independent label that no one's ever heard of during the mid-2000s, called Statue Records. I got it from an email through my SoundClick page. Some E&R man found my music off my SoundClick page at the time.
The SoundClick days.
They sent me an email, and I signed like this really small distribution deal and stuff like that. But it didn't work out in my favor. It just didn't work out, so I just continued playing, working on my craft, and learning the ropes of the music industry or the music scene. So as time wore on, I basically pretty much played more shows locally. I set up a side band to accompany me with doing the music with Patrick Lew Band over the years. As time wore on, technology got more advanced, so
Yeah.
there was more options available for artists to put their music out there. So I decided when I was reading, because I read a lot of stuff in general related to music, like music magazines and books. So I found up a website called cdbaby.com. That was like my main distributor for all.
I think many
Patrick Lew
people
Band
went
records
through
and LPs.
CD Baby. That was the big popular one, wasn't it? A lot of people were on CD Baby.
Yeah, it still is pretty relevant.
Yeah, it's still there. It's still there. It's still doing a fair job, even with the changing landscape. I always saw you as being that sort of person who, what you did was more of a passion project. It was more about that. And yet, I've seen your YouTube and everything, because like I say, you're very prolific on social media. You've got like best part 3,000 subscribers. Okay, that's not like sort of major record label sale, but it's bigger than most people ever get to. 3,000 subscribers. You've got activity going on your social media all the time. I think that in a strange way, you are a very good self-publicist. You know how to present yourself in a way that is similar to your music. I mean, your music is kind of, it's crazy, it's mad. It's like, it's this whole weird world coming from your mind. And I think your social media reflects that. I mean, how do you feel about the use of social media? Is it something that you really enjoy, or is it something that you have reservations about?
I actually enjoy social media. It's like a new virtual fan club for a lot of bands and indie artists and rappers and stuff like that. Yeah, it's a good portal to put people out there and stuff like that. The more you utilize it, the more you generate some buzz and attention for the music you're doing and what you're pretty much doing with what you're mostly passionate about and stuff like that. And I've been on social media since day one, from the Friendster days to the MySpace era, to currently face the other platforms such as Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat, all those other startups all around. And I actually do enjoy the social media thing because it just gives me more opportunities to put my work out there and just. But as far as the whole music publicist and public persona thing, it's pretty much something I learned over time gradually, because I took a music entrepreneurship course in college when I was going to California State University Hayward at the time. I just learned some of the ropes on my own because I'm largely a self-taught musician. I had some lessons when it comes to playing in compositions, but I'm largely self-taught. Yeah. So as I gradually learned things over time, I was able to put more of my stuff out there and present it in a way that's very compelling, so to speak, or at least I think is compelling. There are some things about social media that does get under my skin sometimes, but I try not to let the worst things get to me, whether it's a personal thing or a professional thing.
I think one of the things that's very interesting is that your approach to social media is genuinely very hands-on. I mean, you're one of the few people who I know who you react you very much call out any signs of dissent on your social media. And when I say dissent, I'm talking about people who are maybe being trolls. I've always been very much of the camp that if people are aggressive or rude, the best thing is to laugh them off and push them to one side and just kind of treat them as insignificant. But you really engage with them. You call them out very directly. I mean, I wonder with you, is that something that you do as a tactic or a choice, or is it just genuinely that you feel a kind of an anger towards the way that some people treat social media? Do you feel like genuinely quite annoyed by the fact that people do this?
I must honestly say, at one point, I didn't have the very thickest skin in the world. Actually, I was a very sensitive person at one point, you know. But as I got older, matured got a little wiser, I just roll with the punches and just laugh it off, like you said, you know. Yeah. I try my best to like deflate all the detractors, and as far as like getting under my skin and like making a day go all wrong, you know.
Well, yeah, you don't want to screw up your day because of someone else.
Like it, actually.
Yeah, you don't want to
Oh, yeah.
have that effect. I do think, though, I mean, we've entered this situation now where social media is a very, in one way, it's kind of like the way that compression works on music, social media works on the music industry. In the people who before were the record label darlings who were untouchable are now accessible through Twitter. And those of us who had no voice are brought up in line. And I think it's created a position where maybe there's too much oversaturation in the industry. In the same way that we have more access to the supposed celebrities, it brings up a lot of people who maybe don't deserve to be brought up in, at least with the old system with record companies, someone had to do something to become famous. Now, you'll put out a really interesting album. It won't be for everyone, but it'll be something that really has your soul in it. And then you'll put alongside some dude who's just spout out a couple of beats on GarageBand and he's equally able to get through to people. Do you ever feel... I do feel a bit of resentment towards people who are able to publicize themselves more. They put more effort into their publicity than they do into their actual music. Now, you don't put out anything that you're not happy with. I know this. You're very self-critical. So I know that everything you put out, you genuinely believe in. Well, yeah, no, you do. I've seen you tear apart your own recordings and say, I don't like this recording by me. So I wonder, do you feel any resentment for the fact there's so many people who can use social media to get famous who basically don't have talent? Let's be honest.
Well, it's a very subject, but I just basically try to put my music out there and stuff like that, and I can be a little bit self-critical at times because I'm very meticulous when it comes to planning all the recordings and all the studio recordings and putting it out there. If something's not to my par, I would not put it out there. But it's music's a very subjective thing because maybe one person might not like this particular track I've done, but another might check it out and say, hey, it's a pretty cool song. I can see this guy on the Kpop TV music channel or something like that. Because, it's all hit and miss for me and Patrick Lew Band, really, though. But I can be a little bit self-critical about myself because, I come from a very rough background, growing up in the boondocks of San Francisco. But, I'm already almost 35, so I'm trying to grow past that phase, really, with all the haters and all the negative attention. But I kind of think it this way, maybe one person might not like this song, but then another person might like this album or something that I've done over the past 20 years or something like that,
I think you actually made a very interesting point. I've never been a big believer that many of the categories that we use, like age and race and things, should really affect who we are. However, like you say, music is very ageist. I know this from my hairline. So I do wonder, when you're doing music, it's easy for a lot of people to give up at a certain age and go, well, I'm never going to be famous. And I think the fact that you've kept on doing music, despite the fact that you're in your mid-30s, which is not old, but is considered old to music fans, is a proof of more of a genuine love of doing it. So, do you think that your age, as young as it still is, has had any effect on the way you do music? Do you do anything different because you feel like I'm in my 30s, I should do music differently from how I did in my 20s? Or do you just do it exactly the same?
I evolved over the years musically, I would say. It still sounds like Patrick Lew Band, but there's moments where I was doing this one record back in 2009, Against, and I was trying to I was trying to emulate a little bit of the stuff that was very contemporary at the time, like the scene kid bands and stuff like that, the post-hardcore stuff that was very popular in the scene at the time. But as I got older, not as I got older, but a few years after that, the whole dubstep EDM thing got really popular. So there was, and I had this one guy that was in my band who's also one of my best friends. He inspired me to go under a more electronic music direction in Patrick Lew Band, and I decided to create some more electronically crafted pieces of music. Because I think when James E. Haas said in Smashing Pumpkins back in 1996 that there is a future in electronic music, and I was basically composing a lot of like very different types of styles of music, but it still sounds like Patrick Lew Band for sure.
But
And the thing is, like,
if there's a new technique, if there's a sorry, there's a bit of delay between us. If there's a new technique or something that you can use in your music, I think often, and this is a subject we've talked about a lot on this channel before. Often people will say, like, for example, if you're doing rock music and then you bring in a synthesizer, it's that whole, like with Jump, you know, people go, oh, no, you can't do that. It's not rock anymore. It's like, well, does it matter if it's, I mean, let's be honest, who gives a shit if it's rock? The truth is that you're doing music. If it sounds good, it sounds good. I mean, exactly. So I guess I think that ties a bit with my last point, but do you ever feel like there is a certain, whether it be age or style, whether people are telling you should be playing this, when in actuality you're saying, I just want to make sound?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very experimental when it comes to the recording studio and the home recording studio, so to speak. I play in this other band called Crazy Loser in a Box with my ex-girlfriend Seekin from San Jose, California. And it's very experimental. It's like very avant-garde. Like,
I think everything you do is experimental.
Most avant-garde bands I played in, actually. Huh?
I think everything you do is experimental. In all fairness, I think I compare personally. I compare you a lot to the band Melt Banana. I think you remind me a lot of Melt Banana, although you're very different musically. It's the fact that I think if you took a score of just random public people, 9 out of 10 people probably wouldn't like it, but the 1 out of 10 people who liked it would really get what it is. So I think.
Oh yeah, they're from Japan too, actually.
Yeah, it's got this. What you do is not for everyone at all. It's very much a specific thing, and that in a way can be a good thing, because what you do, like I say, what you do to me sounds more like just pure emotion, pure feeling. Whatever's in here comes out as sound, and that's just kind of it. So, because you are a big fan. This is one of the things we're very different on. You're a big fan of categories. I know how much you love referencing music genres. I see this on your social media all the time. You reference music genres. You reference generations. You have down a scored generation of what Generation X is, what post-millennial. You know all of this. I don't believe in any of this stuff. You're a big fan of these. We always disagree on this, but you're a big fan of these categories. And I've heard you try to categorize your music so many times before, and I just don't believe it works. I don't believe your music can be categorized, because I think it's just an expressive sound. I think it kind of falls into just pure catharsis. I think your music sounds like catharsis. It sounds like someone just letting out what they're thinking. So, I mean, just out of interest, I mean, do you genuinely feel there is a use in these genres? Do you feel that it gives your music identity to refer to as being a genre? Because I never quite understood why you were so interested in that particular way of referring to music.
I don't know. It was something that just interested me at one point, I would say, probably. I guess it was a thing that fascinated me, like, hey, what is my genre of this band, or my band, or something, Patrick Lew Band, or what genre is Crazy Loser in the Box, or my former band, The Verse, or something like that, you know?
It's a sense of comparison then. So what you're saying is that you can think, well, this band is like this. So if I say my band is grunge, people who like Nirvana can listen to me. If I say my band is punk, people who like the Ramones can listen to me. It's kind of more, you feel it's more like referencing, so you can get access to maybe the right fans?
I try not to limit myself when it comes to music, really, as far as the audience goes. I don't just exclusively play for, like, grunge fans or K-pop bands, Japanese or Taiwanese people exclusively like myself or something like that. It's just, you know, music's supposed to be a universal thing, I would say. Well, I don't think it's going to appeal to everyone, but one person might get it, and that's always a good thing, too, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's very true. I mean, music is one of those things where... I mean, I use the example, like I say, for yourself and Melt Banana because I think it's very relevant. I think the music that I've produced has always been never mainstream, but always a little bit more accessible. But I do believe the music you produce is the music you produce is not accessible, and I don't think you want it to be. I don't think that's ever been something.
No, I don't think so.
So when you talk about genres, it's always fascinated me because, like I say, you talk about the bands you like, you talk about genres. It seems almost like the opposite of what you are, and yet I think it's that feeling of like, you know, you like Nirvana, you can see a connection. It's like some way of like maybe almost just kind of justifying the sound that you do. So it makes sense in like a really sort of hard to explain way, but it's just nice to hear you describing that. So, okay.
Yeah.
One of the questions I want to move...
it's just weird.
Is that the genre? We're going to call it weird now.
I'm a weird mindset sometimes. Yeah, I can be a little bit nutty sometimes.
Okay, so one of the questions I really want to move on to, and this is kind of like the core aspect of this channel, so I'm really interested in hearing your opinion on this. Obviously, here we talk about Japanese music. We talk about the music of Japan. It's a big, big thing for us channel, because it is what we do. Now, you are someone, you live in California, you're born and raised in California, but I mean, just to give everyone a perspective, you were raised obviously in an Asian family. You have a lot of mixture. You've got a bit of Taiwanese, Chinese, Japanese. You've got lots of things in your bloodline, but I know that regardless of what your bloodline is, you most identify with the Japanese part of your culture. You've been learning Japanese. I met you here in Japan, where you were using some of your Japanese. You're very familiar with the bands, with the culture. It's something that, regardless of what the percentages on your DNA test might show, you relate to this part of your... Well, yeah, because I've seen your DNA tests. All of them. There's many.
Oh, yeah.
You relate to this part of who you are. So I guess the big question for me, I'm going to ask you first of all, before I present anything, what Japanese bands, honestly, do you most listen to? What are the bands who you can open up your music player and they're the ones who you're listening to most of the time?
So you're asking me which Japanese bands I would be most marketed to, right? Or
not marketed.
That's more towards my audience.
Not marketed. I mean, kind of taking your music out of the picture here, and just look. If I was to pick up, I don't know if you've got like a iPod or you're using an iPhone or something like that. I don't use anything Apple. I don't know why I keep on saying I. But if you were using any of these things, if I was to open it and look at the artists who you most listen to, Japanese artists who you most listen to, who would they be?
I listen to Guitar Wolf, Miyabi, X Japan. I listen to like a lot of other J-pop artists, like the female ones, especially like Puffy, Wink. They're a girl group in the late 80s, early 90s. I listen to Day After Tomorrow. They're like a lesser known band from the early 2000s. I listen
to them.
J-pop, J-rock music for sure. I also like the band. The Mad Capsule Markets from Japan as well, as you know, and I listen to like a lot of like bands from Korea too, like Day 6 and stuff like that.
Day 6,
I have to
really?
admit, I'm also a BTS supporter as well. Yeah, oh yeah. I'm BTS as well as a supporter, you know.
You've given me so much to unpack here. I have to kind of cut you off quickly just to cover some of these points. First of all, it's really interesting. I'm really glad you said Puffy, because I've always been the greatest proponent that I think the Puffy, for all their fame, are seriously underestimated. I don't think people give them enough credit. They were massive influence in the Japanese music industry, and they've kind of been forgotten recently, which I think is a terrible shame. But, you know, bands like Scandal, I do believe Scandal, fantastic band. I don't think they would have existed without Puffy. You know, Puffy affected so much of the music industry. But when you talked about Korean music, you mentioned Day 6. We did a review of Day 6 on this channel. And the one song we listened to, I've got to admit, I was not sure I really took to it massively. And BTS has also been a similar one. I mean, there's some Korean bands who we've listened to and we've really enjoyed on this channel. Dreamcatcher, Walking After You. But BTS is a big, big deal. And yet, I've got to admit, when I listen to them, I kind of feel like they sound kind of just like another K-pop band. And I just think they've got really good marketing. Is there anything you can tell me that you've noticed that makes them better than other K-pop artists, or do you just kind of see them as just being, they're successful, so they represent the Asian community?
Well, I think the biggest fact about Day6 is they play their own instruments. I'm not sure if they actually write or compose their own music or it's done by the producers, but it's very accessible, it's very catchy. I like the exuberance of the group musically.
Yeah.
And they're like 5 good-looking guys, So that's,
that helps. That helps.
If factor when it comes to like the music.
But in regards to the BTS thing, because it's such a phenomenon, is there anything that makes BTS more successful than the other K-pop artists, or do you think people just like them because they're already successful, so it's good to support the successful Asian artist?
Well, for BTS, I think it's the marketing. Yeah, and the social. And I think the marketing has a lot of things to do with BTS, because before there was BTS, there were some K-pop artists or bands that made it big worldwide and all over Asia, but BTS is pretty much the trailblazers of it all, because they're one of the first major K-pop artists or groups that basically made such a large impact all around the world. It could be the marketing, it could be the fact they're good-looking guys, or
that's
they have
gonna help.
the social media backing numbers and stuff like that. I mean, I think they're very good, talented entertainers for sure. They can dance, they can sing. That's just my perspective of them, actually. I mean, they also open doors to other Asian artists from Korea or wherever in Asia to become more accessible in the Western world, because, like, for a long time, my friend, like, Asian males were considered the undercard or the lower tier of social hierarchies in the Western world. But
this is true.
These guys made it okay for Asian men to be marketable towards the opposite sex, and generally speaking, globally, worldwide or something. Like, they have the look, they can dance, they can sing, they can rap, all that kind of stuff. It's like everything rolled into one. It's like, these people are thinking, maybe we should not underestimate these Asian brothers for a long time. Maybe they have something going for them, really.
Well, one of the things that's interesting about what you said there is that obviously, like you say, there's this. I mean, we've all seen in society there is this whole issue about, and this is a dangerous subject to get into, but there's this whole issue about the whole masculinity thing, about negative male stereotypes, etc. I mean, I'm going to leave that all. I'm going to leave that all to the side, because I think there's a lot of nonsense in that, and there's a lot of truth as well. There's a lot of both. What kind of occurred to me is that
I see.
These Korean, these K-pop groups, there's something about their look that's very effeminate. There's the hair dye, the long hair, kind of a make-up-y look. I think in a way that maybe for this generation, they feel kind of safe. There's none of that negative male feeling that a lot of people are now suddenly very scared of. And that maybe they just feel, this is a safe alternative to some of the, I mean, they're not NWA, they're kind of, so people give this excessively.
They're not NWA, though.
Well, people give this fake.
I have to respect them.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, people give this fake aggressive stereotype to black people that isn't true, and people give also a very fake, overly. Kind of like an overly effeminate quality to Asian men that isn't always true. So in a way, it's almost like they've benefited from the stereotype of Asian men being more safe. Do you think that's true?
It's more. I think. Well, the stereotypes are very prevalent in all races and stuff like that, all communities. But for a long time, the Asian American men or Asian men were seen as passive, effeminate, nerdy, or worse. The list goes on.
But BTS are definitely playing to that with the whole style. I think that BTS are definitely playing up that image by going for a more effeminate style. I mean, obviously, I'm not saying that they are effeminate, but I'm just saying that they go for a look that is, it's more presentable. It's not so aggressive.
Yeah, I guess because in these days, especially, I guess it's because I don't know, like, it's hard to put into words, but, you know, they did. Well, I give them one thing though. Like, they're very popular. I see magazines of them all the time in the grocery stores
Yeah.
in California wherever I go. And magazines and that, but having their magazine in the grocery store means it's like a credential spoken right there. It's like they're moving up the place, really. You know, because before you didn't really see Asian artists in special magazines in grocery stores and bookstores in America, so to speak. But
Yeah.
BTS is one of the few artists I've seen of Asian descent or Korean descent that have their own magazine about them, like their whole fan magazine about them.
So however they
grocery stores and
however they may present themselves, it is basically good because of the fact that, you know, it is kind of it's giving people something new. It's giving people access to Asian culture. Even if there are some stereotypical elements about the way they present Asian men, it's still basically just good that women have Asian men who they can, you know, see in a positive light, I guess.
I guess so. I mean, time evolves over, things change over time, really, because back in the 90s, in the Western world, you didn't really see a lot of Asian males in the mainstream action movies or martial arts like Jackie Chan or Jet Li or something like that, or something. Or they're playing a very negative stereotype like a nerd or something like a supporting role in a movie or TV show. Like they're the nerd who's like the captain of the spelling bee or something like that. You know? But these days there's more to it now because times are evolving, times are changing, mindsets change over time. You know, I think that's a good thing, really, because because you know, before the mid 2010s where they blew up, there were Asian males in here and there, left and right, but they were like, I think BTS was probably one of the first major ones to break out like that, you know, in a very worldwide, universal kind of spectrum, for sure. Though, I'm guessing.
So, I mean, as you were mentioning about, well, the Asian presentation, obviously we've talked about BTS, but actually, really, what we should be talking about is Babymetal. Because Babymetal, before BTS, Babymetal were the first Asian artists to really, really smash the American charts. And we think about the American charts, the truth is that is where you judge Western attitudes to music. They were the first artists to really take foreign language music and, you know, really beat it around people's heads. And the interesting thing is, unlike BTS, who do pop music, Babymetal are doing a genre which is not as generally heard in the charts. I mean, how do you feel about Babymetal and the effect that they've had? I mean, what is your opinion of that?
Well, they were the first metal band or Asian rock band to top the Billboard charts not too long ago, and that's actually considered quite an accomplishment because before that, you didn't really see a lot of Asian artists or rock bands basically having a #1 record on the Billboard charts, actually. And that's a good thing, because I actually really like Babymetal, too.
Yeah, no, they're genuinely good. They're genuinely really good.
Oh, yeah. I have a Babymetal CD at home, too. I got it at Best Buy store like a few years ago. It's like the Metal Resistance album. Good album, by the way.
That's a brilliant album. Brilliant album. Have you got any favorite songs from Metal Resistance?
I like Metatolo.
Oh,
I can't pronounce it right?
It was good enough. I'm going to judge your Japanese now, just to be a dick. But I really loved. I'm pretty sure that. Oh, are you still there? There you are. Okay, sorry, just cut out for a second.
I'm here. Yeah, I'm here. I got a spam call at first on my phone.
Tales of the Destinies, I'm pretty sure it was on Metal Resistance.
Phone number just called my telephone number.
Don't worry, I'll make sure nothing comes up that shouldn't. I thought that Tales of the Destinies was a really interesting song. I mean, really, you know, it's so great to hear them doing like a sort of prog metal thing. That was an amazing song. It's a great album. I think they've been very, very clever with what they've done. I can see you walking around. Can you tell us, by the way, quickly, before I ask you the next question, where are you? Because you told me before the call where you are.
So I am in my neighborhood in San Francisco I reside in called the Crocker Amazon. This is an elementary school I used to attend back in the 90s. I graduated this elementary school in 1996.
This is your school? You're actually outside your school?
Yeah, this is a school I attended back in the 90s. I lived right next door to my elementary school, so I would go home, watch my cartoons when I get back home, right after I get out of school at 2:40. This is actually the more residential area of San Francisco, like all a bunch of big houses. Not the metropolitan area, which is like downtown, Union Square, Chinatown.
Yeah.
All those places in San Francisco. Haight-Ashbury, which is like further down, like not, this is actually a quiet residential area of San Francisco I live in. My house is just right around the corner. I'll show you my house actually.
Are you sure for the entire internet?
No, but my guitar is actually inside the house though. But I decided to do the interview outside the house to avoid to not distract my brother from sleeping and my dad from sleeping, because I thought they would be still sleeping by this hour. Because I'm usually the first to get up out of bed at home. So this is my recording studio right here. This is my residence, my personal grace land. That house, that peach house right on that corner right there.
Fantastic.
If you can see it.
I love that you have your own recording studio and everything. You're a home recording.
Huh?
You're a home recording guy, much like me. You're a great believer that. I mean, let's face it. Technology is now to the point where a recording studio is almost redundant. So it's fantastic that you do all this stuff at home.
Yep, I do everything at home for sure. And I put it out there, all over the World Wide Web for sure, though.
Love it. Well, I was interested to ask you a couple of questions, actually, and I'm so happy to see your house. It's such a strange privilege to be able to see your house during this interview. But one of the questions, I wanted to bring up a few bands, because there's a few bands who we've talked about a lot on this channel. And I don't know which ones you have opinions about and which ones you don't. But I want to hear your opinions on certain groups. The first one that comes to mind is what your thoughts are on Bandmaid.
Bandmaid?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I like them actually. I have one of their records on Apple Music actually. I heard one of them used to work in a Maid Cafe, but not sure which one.
Miku, the one who
Cafe.
looks most like a maid. She's the rhythm guitarist.
Oh yeah, did she work in the one in Akihabara? She worked at Maid Dreamin', right? Or a different one?
She didn't work in the, because you and I went to a Maid Cafe together. She didn't work in the one that we went to.
Yeah, I remember.
The one she went to, worked in, I don't think it's there anymore. Because Maid Dreaming, the one that we went to, is kind of like the Maid Cartel. They've taken over most of the Maid Cafes. So I think the one that Miku worked in, I might be wrong. I don't think it's there anymore. I think it got bought out. But yeah. So is there any particular songs of theirs you like, or anything about their style that you enjoy particularly?
I like how they're like an all-girl band and they have like a more aggressive sound and maybe let's say Scandal, Siren, stuff like that. They have more of a hard rock sound that's kind of reminiscent of the bands I grew up listening to, like from the 90s, early 2000s, but they still sound like them though. It's like Bandmaid, This is my perception of them, but they have a more hard rock kind of sound. That's why I like them actually.
They got a very detailed style of playing.
Huh?
Sorry, they got a very detailed style of writing and playing. I mean, the musicianship Bandmaid uses is at an extremely high level. I mean, the way that they play is amazing.
Oh yeah, I think so too.
A clear agreement. Okay, so actually that was my next question. You briefly mentioned, but what's your opinion? Because Bandmaid, their members are very good friends with Silent Siren. You regularly see pictures online of them all out drinking together. What is your opinion on Silent Siren? How do you feel about them?
I just got the CD. I just got their 2017 album shipped to my address from eBay.
Which one
was shipped from Taiwan or something? What?
Was that
Girl Power?
Girl Power, wasn't it? That was.
Yeah, I got the CD DVD one, the physical copy shipped to my house. I ordered it on eBay from a seller in Taiwan about a couple months ago. It took about a month to get shipped over to my house, but I like them actually. I have a magazine from Gigs with Silent Siren on the cover. This one Japanese magazine called Gigs.
I saw that on your Facebook.
It shows them all the gear they use on stage and in the studio.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually personally, I mean, I really enjoy both Bandmaid and Silent Siren. I would say that Silent Siren are I have an special appreciation for them because I think that they are something that only ever occurs in Japan, in that they are
I think so.
they're a pop band. They're a pop band, but they play with all the integrity and quality of a rock band. You know, they have all of that same quality that a rock band would have. I've been very much a strong supporter of what they do. They have many fantastic albums. I'd say if you're following that journey, keep on following it. They got a new one coming out soon. They just dropped a teaser for their new video, which, as with all of their teasers, tells you absolutely nothing. So definitely check out more of them, I'd say. So the last artist I want to mention now, this is a very popular artist who we talked about briefly before. But what's your opinions on Scandal? Because Scandal they're the archetype. They are the girl rock band of Japan. If you refer to one, you refer to Scandal. What do you think about them and how their careers developed?
I think they're the starters of this whole trend and the whole scene, really. Basically, they're like you said, the all-girl rock band up the moment, really. You know. They played a show in San Francisco like about 2 or 3 years ago. I was about to go, but I kind of feel bummed for not going because I was doing like an acting gig for a TV show on the same day, unfortunately.
So you kind of got beaten by your own success. I think that, Scandal, I don't know if necessarily they started it, but they were the ones who definitely broke through the mold. They were the first ones who really gained. I mean, I was in Japan I think it was in 2008 when they had their first album come out, and I remember there was a big thing about it. It was not small, and they've kind of maintained that. So I think it was more that they were the first group to really push through that barrier in Japan, and obviously
I think so too. Yep.
I think Babymetal were the first ones to push that border internationally, but Scandal on a national level were the first ones, I think.
Scandal for sure, but you remember an '80s J-pop group called Princess, right?
Yes.
I think they're one of the earlier ones for sure, though. They're in the '80s and early '90s.
Very much.
I think before Scandal, there was Princess in the '80s and the J-pop, J-rock industries and scene.
Well, Puffy as well. I think Puffy, like I say, very much paved the road for Scandal. Scandal.
I think so too. Yeah.
Scandal differentiated from Puffy in that they wrote. Well, they didn't write their songs initially, but they very much got into writing their songs, and that they were much more hands-on with the instrumentals, where Puffy only occasionally picked up instruments. Scandal were playing instruments all the time. There was a natural development between the two. But yeah, you've kind of been watching it develop in stages for a while, haven't we?
Oh, yeah. That's true.
So, with this all considered, I mean, what would you say the biggest difference for you is between Japanese, primarily Japanese music, and Western music? How do you think that Japanese music is on a better trajectory? I mean, are there any clear differences that stand out to you?
That's a very good question, very comprehensive question, I would say. Like,
Thank you.
Japanese music I've noticed a lot of Japanese music has a lot of precision and a lot of technical musicianship, and like, I heard there's something where it's impossible to make it in Japan as a sloppy musician.
Yeah.
I could be wrong about that though, of course, but there's like a lot of like great musicians and a lot of records in Japan. Like, I listen to records in Japan. They sound very well crafted, very polished and slicked up and stuff like that in production values.
Yeah.
It's very clear sounding. Like, I don't know how to put it into words, but Japanese music has like a lot, other than the fact that it's sung in their native tongue, it has like a lot of, I don't know how to put it into like technical words. I mean, I listen to it a lot, but there's obviously a difference between American or Western and Japanese music. But, maybe it's not just the language barriers involved, but, but I've noticed that the Japanese music has like a lot of slick kind of sound to it for sure, though. Like,
production values might be an element.
Idols and stuff like that, too.
Yeah. I mean, actually, to bring back the example of Siren, they had 2 semi-independent albums before they hit a big deal. And I bought them. And I was like, okay, I'll buy them to review. And so I was listening to the two semi-independent albums, and when I switched them on, I don't know, in the back of my head I was expecting something like hearing Silent Siren play in a garage or a garage. I was expecting hearing like a garagey sound, and then I listened to these two semi-independent albums, and they sound like they just came straight off the radio. The production quality was amazing, and it kind of struck me as like everything that comes out of Japan sounds well made. And maybe it is that love for detail.
Oh yeah,
it's that obsession with detail. It's that obsession with, perfection of everything. Which is interesting because, like I say, you're someone who I don't regard as being in that ilk. You're someone who you're more raw. Everything you do is very raw. It's very much about blasting forth the energy of Patrick Lew.
oh yeah. The most raw Japanese band I listen to is Guitar Wolf, actually.
That's probably fair. Yeah, there's something kind of raw about them as well. You mentioned X Japan as well. They're pretty raw. From the stuff I've heard by them,
They're
pretty
raw.
as well.
They're raw indeed. Yeah.
Yeah.
X Japan's very raw, but the production value is very polished too.
Yeah.
The studio production is very, very well crafted and polished for sure, though.
Yeah.
But I listen to Guitar Wolf. One of the albums I have from Guitar Wolf from 1999 has a very lo-fi, raw sound to it. Like Jet Generation from Guitar Wolf has a very raw, lo-fi sound, straight out like garage punk. It sounded like something that was recorded in a basement or something. But I liked it though. That's the this record I listened to. Other than Mad Capsule's Market, one of their earlier records and stuff like that too.
Yeah, I mean, my co-presenter here, James, he is a massive, he won't mind me saying, he's a massive Mad Capsule Markets fan. And I remember once when I went round to his house and he had virtually, it was like a shrine, a display cabinet full of special edition Mad Capsule Markets merchandise and things. That boy loved that band. So I'm pretty sure if he's going to be that much into them, I'm pretty sure they're good. I've only heard a little bit of them, actually. I've only heard a little bit of them.
A lot of Japanese artists I listen to have a very. They don't sound like it's recorded in a basement or like on some primitive equipment or something like that. Not at all. Like a lot of the ones I listen to, like aside from Guitar Wolf and maybe a few other garage punk bands and garage rock bands I might have heard here and there from Japan, they have a very like polished sound. Like it's very polished, very well crafted. Even though, like some of the independent bands, like you mentioned, like Scan or Silent Siren would do when they were cutting independent releases in the indie circuit, it had a very, very enhanced, very well crafted sound and stuff. It didn't sound like it was made in a basement or on recording equipment or something like that, or on a 4-track Porta studio or some shit like that. You know, it was very well crafted for sure, like the sound for sure, very polished, slick, enhanced, and very, you know.
I think you're right. I think we often there's a lot of romancing of the fact that the independent band came up in the West in like the 80s and 90s when recording, a digital recording, just wasn't a thing that anyone could afford. Certainly. So the idea of tape recording and recording things in a sort of independent way was kind of like a badge of honor. Whereas in the Japanese world, the idea of being an independent band was a much more recent thing aligned to the digital era. Thus, you know, everyone's kind of been able to produce a really high quality demo off the bat. So, yeah, I think there is a difference there. I guess my main question would be, therefore, and we'll have this as a big crescendo, a big final question. What do you want to see Japanese music develop into? What do you want the future of Japanese music to be? How do you want it to move forwards?
I just anticipate more interesting bands and artists to come from Japan actually over time. And it's gonna be more accessible towards the Western audiences with the advent of the internet, word of mouth marketing and stuff like that. I think there is a future where there's gonna be a market for East Asian, especially Japanese artists and bands, rappers that make it through.
Yeah.
The music scene to audiences outside of East Asia and Japan, because you know the world's always changing, the world's always evolving. Because back in the early days of MTV in the United States, they didn't really play a lot of black artists. There were a lot of complaints about it. I think gradually over time there'll be a lot of more Japanese artists and East Asian artists in general making their own strides and marks in the music scene.
I saw an interview recently, which was one that was posted. I can't remember. It might have even been you who posted it. But it was an interview with David Bowie, where David Bowie had been talking to an interviewer from MTV back in like the 80s or something, or whatever it was. And he was talking about why don't you have more black artists on here. One of the interesting thing, though, is that black music is often the progenitor to white music. You look at rock and roll, you look at a lot of the popular genres, they have been, black music developed by white bands and then sort of, turned into this new thing. It's black and then white. However, Asian music is a totally separate thing. You look at how Asians do everything. It's like it's a parallel line. And I often wonder, because you look at K-pop, the more popular it gets, the more it sounds like Western contemporary music. And I wonder sometimes whether the Asian groups get more popular by sounding more Western. I mean, K-pop sounds more Western than J-pop, and since that's happened, K-pop has surpassed J-pop. So do you think it's possible for Japanese music, J-pop, J-rock, which is so unique in its style of writing, to become popular in the West without having to lose some of its identity at the same time?
It's a good question, really. I can't say for sure what will happen in the future, but usually there's some artists that are more well garnered in certain areas. Like the Western people, they really like the music they like, but in Japan, they don't like Xbox video game consoles because it's more of an American thing. It doesn't really attach to the Japanese video game market and gamers as much as the Americans do. So there might be a niche audience for it. It might not be a big audience, but even if they retain some of their aspects, it might not be a big audience, but as long as they're still playing and still making music and they have some audience, even if it's not like a mainstream worldwide audience or accessible conventional audience, it's still music nonetheless. Still music nonetheless. It's always going to have a place for people out there for sure.
I think that's fair. Even if it doesn't rise to the same level of popularity, it will always find an audience anywhere in the world because there'll always be people who want to hear it. Okay, well, I must say...
Thank you for that, though.
Yeah, I must say, honestly, Patrick, it has been a real pleasure. As someone who's known you for so long, we've only actually met the one time in Japan. It's been a real pleasure getting to know you, hearing about your opinions. For anyone watching this, you know who you are. I must say, do check out, if you want to hear something which is genuinely cathartic, if you want to hear music that is more concerned with catharsis than it is with the rules of music, then check out Patrick Lew. Especially, like I said, if you're a fan of things like Melt Banana, if you want to hear something which is about just kind of like a release, then check out Patrick Lew. I'm sure if you put in Patrick Lew into Google, this guy is insane with the amount of social media he does. You'll find him easy. And so, like I say, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Like I say, you bring a really genuinely interesting and different perspective to this conversation that we don't get to hear very often. And so, yeah, from me, I must say a massive thank you to you. Thank you to everyone who's been watching.
Thank you.
And from Japan, for now, I didn't say this at the end of the last interview and you guys complained, so I'm going to do it this time. From Japan, for now, ciao, ciao.